Um,
That's what,
I'd like to dedicate this morning's learning to my late mother-in-law, Rus Bas Yehuda Leib Shlomo, to your site.
oh, Shem should have an aliyah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Okay, I'll get you right going. We are on Vav Gimel.
Zayin Gimel, but yeah.
If one was working with his hands but not with his feet but not with his hands, or even with his shoulder, he may eat. Rabbi Yossi says, the son of Rabbi Yehuda says, he may not eat unless he works with his hands and his feet. If he was working with the figs, he may not partake of the grapes, and with the grapes, he may not partake of the figs, but he may abstain until he reaches the place of the best fruits and eat. Concerning all of these, the rabbi said they may eat only at the time of work, but in order to avoid a loss to its owner, they said the laborers may eat while walking from row to row, and when they return from the wine press, concerning a donkey, it may eat when it is being unloaded. A laborer may eat a cucumber even if it is worth a dinner, or a date even if it is worth a dinner. The Elazar Chizma says a laborer may not eat in excess of his wages. The sages permit it, but maintain that we should teach a person not to be a glutton, lest he shut the door in his face.
Okay. Mishna Vav. Kotzetz Adam al yedei atzmo, al yedei beno v'vitzon gedolim, al yedei avdo v'shivchas gedolim, al yedei ishto, mipnei sheyesh behem das. Okay, just what we're talking about over here is that this is a God-granted right that a person, that a laborer has to eat from the fruit. However, it's just a right. He is allowed to waive it. So let's say the employer says, "Listen, I'm prepared to pay you extra, but I want to have all the produce. I don't want people eating my produce before it's done." And the guy says, "Okay, that's fine." So, and that's fine for them to negotiate between each other, because it's something he's allowed to waive his own rights, and not only that, he can waive his rights. He can waive the rights of his Beno Bita Gedolim, his adult children who are why these are the children who are Samuch al Shulchano. Right? We've seen before that the rights to your children's Metzias and things is based on whether you're feeding them or not. Right? If they even just because they're bar mitzvah, they're not out working and feeding themselves. So if they're eating from the father's money, then he's also got the right to negotiate their deal. So let's say they're going into the field and working, and he was getting the money. So he's also allowed to say, "Listen, I want you to not eat from the field, and so we can bring in extra money." Okay. Also, his eved and his shifcha, he can, as long as they're adult, he can make a deal like that, or even with his wife as well. Okay, because they have the das to be able to restrain themselves. However, but his minor children who don't have the keep seeing this.
I can't stop it. He loves being up here. Oh man, give me a break. Wait, I'm gonna put it outside. I'll put it right out the other room. All right, don't cry. That's what you do. I'll play with you later. Okay, here you go. Out. Okay.
But he can't make this kind of deal on behalf of his minor children, because they don't have the willpower to resist. Okay, and neither for his animal. You can't say, "Okay, I'll give you my ox for threshing and it won't eat." Right? Just as much as you're going to say no, ox don't eat, like cats don't jump up on the table. They don't have the ability to restrain themselves.
Okay.
Mishna Zayin, okay, so now Neta Revai, for the first 3 years, the produce is Asr because it's Orla. But Neta Revai is much like Maaser Sheni, where you can redeem it and take the money to Jerusalem and eat food in Jerusalem for it. So the standard thing to do with Neta Revai produce is going to be to redeem it, and then you can eat it. But the problem is that if you haven't redeemed it, you can't eat it yet. So a guy hires a bunch of workers to work in his field, which is fourth year, and they don't know. So they walk into the field, and he says, "Okay, guys, start picking. Oh, just one thing. This is Neta Revai." And they say, "Hey, That's not fair. You didn't tell us, right? So if he did tell them, then and they accepted that the deal, they say, listen, I need people to work in my Neturivai field, and they say, okay, we'll do it. So then they came in eyes wide open. They knew they weren't going to be able to eat from it. And that's fine. But if he didn't inform them, then what has he got to do? He's got to redeem the fruit for them so that they can eat. So as they're picking, he has to keep redeeming so that they can eat the fruit that they're picking. Or what he could do, of course, is set aside enough money to do the pidyon, and say and make it tonight that as soon as they pick it, it's as soon as they pick it to eat, it's redeemed on this coin. Okay. Nis parsu igulav, nis paschu chaviosav. Now what happens is he's got fig cakes, and these fig cakes have not yet been mastered. They're finished, but he hasn't mastered them yet. Okay, nis paschu chaviosav, or his barrels that have got olives in it. Is it olives? Oh, your wine. It's wine. So he's got a barrel of wine which hasn't yet had truma and master taken from it, and a crack has appeared in it, and he quickly hires some workers to come and fix up the break. Now these workers, Meikar Adin, should be allowed to eat from it because they're working with produce in between the stage where it's being picked and where it's chayav in trumas and masters.
Right. Okay.
So they should be allowed to drink from it. The Mishnah says, if you inform them up front, then they must know that they're not allowed to eat from it, and that's fine. But if he didn't inform them, and they say, listen, we're entitled to eat from this, so now what he must do is he must take trumas and masters, so that they can eat from it while they're fixing it.
It's just similar to the first part of the Mishnah, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but they're just in different stages of the one is in the harvest stage, the other one is in the gathering sort of stage.
Okay,
but it's the same idea. Yes. Shomer peros ochlin mehilkos medina, aval lo min Torah. So now here's somebody who is guarding an orchard that's right. The fruit's ripe, ready to be picked, but they've just stationed guards around so that people don't come and swipe the fruit. Okay. Now he's not actually working with the fruit, so min Torah he's not entitled to eat the fruit. Okay. But mehilchos medina, because the minhag medina, in other words, the minhag is to let the guards themselves eat from the fruit. Because right, that just happens to be the minhag medina that they just said, okay, well, you'll also do it. So stam a worker who's guarding the fruit is allowed to eat from it. The Kahati points out that, as a matter of fact, the guardians of these orchards they actually do not eat, not from the Torah and not from the Hilchos Medina, and also so this is when they're still in the machubar, when they're still attached to the tree. I said it wrong. When they're still attached to the tree, they're not entitled to eat, not even mehilchas medina. It's only when they're busy harvesting and making piles of things to take through that we say mehilchas medina, they can reach across and take one. But if they're not, but they can't actually start picking. Okay, that's just a subtle difference over there. And then, for some completely inexplicable reason, I don't know why, midway through Mishnah, we I suppose because we're talking about Shomrim, so we segue into a completely different subject, which is Shmira. Arba Shomrim Hen. There are 4 different categories of Shomrim. There's the shomer chinam, who's not being paid for it. Hashoel, a borrower. Nose sachar is a renter. Sorry, no, Nose sachar is a somebody who's a paid custodian, and a socher is a renter. Shomer chinam nishba al hakol. So the shomer chinam can deny responsibility on anything except for pshia. If he was negligent, then he's going to have to pay. All he has to do is take a shvua that he wasn't negligent, and he's not responsible for anything. Hashoel mishalem es hakol. The borrower, on the other side, is completely liable for anything that happens, even an ones. So he's not going to take a shvua on anything. There is, however, we'll see a little edge case of where the shoel doesn't pay, and that's if the owner comes to work with him, and the owner's with him at the time that this happens. Okay. And nose sachar v'asocher. So the paid custodian and the renter are considered on the same level. Okay. Nishbaim ala shvura v'ala shvuya v'ala meisa. So when there's something that's called an ones, right? The animal, let's say you're talking about an animal fell and broke its leg. It wasn't his responsibility, or it was kidnapped. It was there were robbers that came and stole it from him at gunpoint, knife point, whatever it was. He's not responsible for that. And if it dies on his watch, that's considered an ones. He's not expected to give his life to protect the property. So then, if that happens, then he takes a shvur to say it was an ones. But if it was lost or if it was stolen, even through no fault of his own, really, but your job as a shomer is to prevent ganeva.
No.
Okay, so if it gets stolen, then he is going to be chayav for it. Okay, we're going to have to do chazaras, and then we're going to have to duck.
Okay. Hey, Allah. What is interest and what is increase? What is interest if one lends a seller for 5 dinners, or 2 seller a sign of wheat for 3 because he bites? And what is an increase? One who increases through produce. How? If he purchased wheat from him at the rate of a golden dinar per core, and that was the market price, then wheat rose to 30 dinars, and he said to them, "Give me my wheat, for I wish to sell it and purchase wine for it." He replied, "Your wheat shall be considered a debt of 30 dinars upon me, and you have a claim of wine upon me for them." But he has no wine. Excuse me. If one lends to another, he may not dwell in his courtyard gratis, nor may he rent from him for less, because it is an increase. The rent may be increased, but the sale price may not be increased. How? If he rented him his courtyard and said to him, "If you pay me now, you may have for 10 salam per year, but if you pay for each month in this month, you must pay a salar a month." It is permissible. If he sold him his field and said to him, "If you pay me now, it is yours for 1,000 zuz. But at the time of threshing, if I would give it to you for 12 months, amana, it is prohibited." If I sold him a field and he gave him part of the money, and he said to him, "Whenever you wish, bring the money and take yours," it is prohibited. If he lent him on the security of his field and said to him, "If you did not pay me within 3 years, it is mine," it is his. And so it was Bison, the son of Zalman, went to do with the consent of the Kukumen. Do you have to go, or?
No, I'm good still.
You're good. Okay. All right.
Abakama hey gimel.
Hey, Gimel. If one brings his bull into another's yard without permission, and the other person's bull gores it, or the other person's dog bites it, he's exempt. If he gores the other person's bull, the owner of the goring bull is liable. If it falls into his pit and makes it water foul, he's liable. If his father or his son was in it, he pays ransom. But if he brings it in with permission, the owner of the yard is liable. Rebbe says in no case is he liable unless he accepts to watch. If a bull aims for another bull and strikes a woman, causing her to abort, the owner is exempt from paying the value of the fetus. But if a person aims for another person and strikes a woman, causing her to abort, he pays the value of the fetus. How does one pay the value of the fetus? We appraise how much the woman was worth before giving birth and how much she's worth since giving birth. Said Rabbi give us Shimon ben Gamliel, if he saw when the woman gives birth, she increases its value, it increases in value, and rather we appraise how much the fetus was worth, and he gives it to the husband. If he has no husband, he gives it to his heirs. If she had been a slave who was freed or a prostitute, he is exempt. If one digs a pit in a private domain and opens it into a public domain, or if he digs it in a public domain and opens it in a private domain, or if he digs it in a private domain and opens it into another private domain, he is liable. If one digs a pit in a public domain and a bull or a donkey falls into it and dies, he's liable. Whether he digs a pit, a trench, a cave, quadrangular pits, or wedge-like ditches, he is liable. If so, why is pit stated? The teacher said, just as a pit is deep enough to cause death, being 10 handbreadths, so is everything that is deep enough to bring about death. Being 10 handbreadths, if they are less than 10 handbreadths deep, and a bull or donkey fell into it and died, he is exempt. If it is injured, he is liable.
Okay.
Okay. Nazir.
Hey.
If he says, I am a Nazir, and it is an obligation upon me to provide for a Nazir to shave his head, and his friend heard him and said, and it is an obligation upon me to provide for a Nazir to shave his head. If they are clever, they provide for each other to shave, and if not, they must provide for another Nazir, for other Nazirim to shave. If he says, it is an obligation upon me to provide for the shaving of half a Nazir, and his friend heard him and said, and it is an obligation upon me to provide for the shaving of a half a Nazir, this one must provide for the shaving of a complete Nazir, and this one must provide for the shaving of a complete Nazir. These are the words of Reb Meir, but they can come and say, this one provides half of the sacrifices needed to shave a Nazir, and this one provides of the half of the sacrifices needed to shave a Nazir. One of them says, I am a Nazir when a son will be born to me, and a son was born to him, he is a Nazir. If a daughter or one of an unknown gender or an androgyne was born to him, he is not a Nazir. If he says, when I shall see that there will be born to me a child, even if there is born to him a daughter or one unknown gender or an androgyne, he's a Nazir. If his wife lost a baby, she is not a Nazir. Reb Shimon says he should say.
No, that's next. That's cool. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. We have Pesachim. If someone designates a female animal for his Pesach offering, or male in a second year, it must be left to pasture until it develops a blemish and is sold, and its money is placed in the native offering chest. If one had designated his Pesach offering and then died, his son who inherits it may not bring it as a Pesach offering, but rather as a shlomin. If the Pesach offering was confused with other offerings, they must be all left to pasture until they develop blemishes and are sold. Then he should bring this type of offering equivalent in value to the best of them, and he should bring the other type of offering equivalent in value to the best of them, and he must cover the added cost from his own purse. If it was confused with firstborn offerings, Reb Shimon says, if the group is composed of Kohanim, they may eat the offerings. A group that lost his Pesach offering and said to one, go out, seek it, and slaughter it for us. And he went out, found it, and slaughtered it. Meanwhile, they bought and slaughtered another. If this was his slaughtered first, he eats of his, and they eat of his with him. If theirs was slaughtered first, they eat of theirs, and he eats of his. But if it is not known which of them was slaughtered first, or if both were slaughtered at the same time, then he eats of his, but they did not eat with him, and theirs must be burned, but they are exempt from observing the second Pesach. If he said to them, if I delay, go and slaughter for me, and he went out, found it, and slaughtered it, meanwhile they bought and slaughtered another, if theirs was slaughtered first, they eat of theirs and eats with them. He eats with them. If his was slaughtered first, he eats of his, and they eat of theirs. But it is not known which was slaughtered first, or if both were slaughtered at the same time, then they eat of theirs, but he does not eat with them, and he is burned, but he is exempt from observing the second Pesach. If he said to them, and they said to him, all of them eat of the first, but it is not known which of them was slaughtered first, they both are burned. If they said nothing to them and they said nothing to him, they are not responsible for each other.
Okay. And that's probably the smartest play. The last one is just don't say anything and then get into less trouble. Okay.
Regarding a pot that was full of water and is placed in a mikveh, and a tumah stretched out his hand and inserted it into the pot is tameh. If the person was tameh through contact with the source of tumah, the pot is tahor. But as for all other liquids, they are tameh because water does not purify other liquids. Regarding one who fills in an irrigation pipe until 3 days have elapsed, it is tamei. Rabbi Akiva says if the water is in the pipe dried up and it's tahor immediately, but if it's not dry, even until 30 days have passed, it's tamei. Regarding logs upon which the liquid fell and then rain fell upon them, if the volume of rainwater exceeded the volume of liquid, it is tahor. If he took the logs outside so that the rain should fall on them, then even though the volume of water rain are considered the volume of the liquid, it is tamei. If the logs absorb tamei liquids, then even though he took them outside so rain could fall on them, the rainwater is tahor, but he should kindle them only with tahor hands. Rav Shimon says if the logs were moist and he kindled them and the volume of the liquid were then excluded was greater than the volume of the liquid they absorb, the liquid is tahor. Okay. And we have Rachel. Okay, Vav Gimel. Although they said we secure payments from those obligated for each Eric vows, we allow him food for 30 days, clothing for 12 months, and a bed made up with bedding, shoes and tefillin for himself, but not for his wife or his children. If he was a craftsman, we allow him 2 tools of each kind. A carpenter is given 2 planes and 2 saws. Reb Eliezer says if he was a plowman, they gave him his yoke of oxen. A donkey driver, they gave him his donkey. If he had many of one kind and few of another kind, we did not tell him to sell some of the money of many and to buy for himself some of the few. Rather, we give him 2 kinds of the many and whatever he has of the few. If one consecrates his property, they assess for him his tefillin. Whether one consecrates his property or one vows his own Eric, he has nothing of his wife's clothing or of his children's clothing, or if he dyed garments that he dyed for them, or of the new shoes that he bought for them. Although they said slaves are sold with the garments to enhance their value, for if clothing is purchased for him for 30 dinners, his value increases a mana, and if so with the cow. If they hold it until the market day, its value increases. And so it is with a pearl. If they bring it up to the large city, its value increases. And the temple treasury has only its place and its time.
Okay.
Hey, I can't believe we made it.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good day, and everything should be well. Have a great Shabbos. Thank you.